You're listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast, the show that helps you build wealth faster, think outside the box, and break out of the herd. Here's your host, Jim Oliver.
Welcome back, Breakaway Wealth. I'm your host, Jim Oliver, and with me today, my special guest, John Tarnoff. Welcome, John.
Hey, Jim. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. John, before we dive in and get to know a little bit about you and how you serve people, tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your journey. I know you're out there in California, and it's freezing cold, and nobody would ever want to go there.
Exactly. Stay away. Stay away. We have enough people out here.
I understand. That's what I say about Florida.
So great to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me on. I am a career coach, executive and career coach, focusing on mid-career professionals going through this midlife, mid-career transition, which is pretty much inevitable and something that I think has been exacerbated by the digital revolution, the pace of change, and the fact that if you are like most people, you really can't afford to retire at the traditional age of 60 to 65. And you're more interested in staying engaged in the world and in business, and recognizing the value that getting up and going to work and having a purpose every day brings to you. So I help people kind of figure out that next act and what happens when they kind of hit this wall in their late 40s, early 50s. The big refrain that I get a lot is, why is it taking me so much longer to get a job at this stage? I never used to have a problem getting a job. All of a sudden now, people are looking at me differently. What's the problem?
Yeah, that's I love that. You know, the funny thing is, you know, I live in retirement central, right? Snowbirds, retirees, and we always say they're PIPs, previously important people, right?
Right.
And I don't know, John, I could give you countless people they're looking for something to do, right? They're in their 70s, and they like want purpose, you know, and I mean, they're full of knowledge, and these people have done some big things in their past. Right. Yep. And it's not a financial thing. Sometimes it's just, you know, you see people that they don't have a purpose anymore, and they kind of die, you know, like slowly, but they die.
Yeah, absolutely.
They stop taking care of themselves. I mean, it's just weird. Right. And you know, I never want to be like that. I always say that my resignation will be in my obituary. So my team, I just tell them, hey, you know, I don't plan on ever retiring because I love doing what I do. So talk about why that happens, and kind of maybe share a story of somebody that was going through this, was having a hard time in their 40s, 50s, turned it around, and, you know, give me a success story.
Sure. Well, you know, to the point of being in Florida and retirement central, and that idea of previously important person is so scary. I think it is. I mean, imagine being kind of trapped in that situation and locked into that identity of being a retiree. It's no wonder that there are so many quote unquote retirement consultants who are trying to help people acclimate or resign themselves to this situation. And what are you going to do in retirement? But they don't ask that earlier question, which is, why are you in retirement to begin with? Now, the good news is about the world that we live in today and the digital revolution is that you don't have to have a successful career by going into an office every day, 9 to 5. Right? There are so many more opportunities, both for people who are in the mainstream of their careers and for people who are beyond that mainstream into a late career stage, where you have so many more options. You know, you can start a business with this, right? You don't need to have the financing and the backing and the organization. It's all available to you outsourced. So the only limitation is your mind. That is a big paradigm shift for a lot of people who really don't understand, don't really realize that they have this power to keep their careers going. One of the big questions that I get is, do I have to make a big pivot? Should I just ditch the whole career and go off and, open up a bait shop in Key West, or, or start, some kind of a small mom and pop business, open up a donut shop?
Right.
And my answer is usually, don't make that big step. Don't take that 180-degree turn. My whole approach is to be a self-reflective person, to really take a personal growth approach to career growth and career development, and think about, what is it that you really love doing? What is it that you do well? What does your world need? And what can you get paid for? So these are the four so-called ikigai questions, based on the Japanese concept of life's purpose. And at the intersection of those four questions is the answer to this evolution, where you take all of who you are and now apply it forward in a much more intentional way. In terms of examples of this, I mean, my goodness, it feels like pretty much everyone that I work with is along this path. But I'll tell you a story about a guy who just always puts a smile on my face. This is a guy who grew up at this one company. They were doing, it was a national company. They were doing sales in art supplies to small businesses, to brick and mortar art supply stores. He built this company up. He became the company president. He worked there for like 20, 30 years. He took the company into an employee-owned company. But they were ultimately disrupted by Amazon and by the growth of large retailers. And I think around 2015, 2016, they had to shutter the company. It was devastating. And he kind of kicked around for a few years. Then the pandemic hit. Never really found a berth for himself. Was consulting in distribution and in that field that he had been in supplies. And when I met him, he came to me and he was consulting for a chain of running shoe stores. And he was a runner, so it kind of made sense. And it made sense for them that they would, ask him his advice on, various retail questions. But he was thinking about doing something different. He was going to go into a nonprofit. He was going to start this or that. And I said, look, you've got an interesting situation facing you right there. You're a runner. You're working for a running shoe company. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Engage with them more. See if there's an opportunity there for you to kind of grab a hold of something that's meaningful and purposeful for you. And sure enough, he kind of turned back around, got more involved with them, and they offered him a position. They offered him a region. I think it was their top region to run. He had to move, and he worked doing this for a year. Some of the problems that he had with the company: not great management, not great communication, some leadership issues. It all kind of came back. The chickens came back to roost. After a year, he said, I can't take this anymore. These people are just completely not, running this company into the ground. And he left, but he left with a game plan. He had learned a lot in that year and in the consulting he had done before. And he came back out of the gate with a new consultancy on his own to service small retail businesses and help them with all of the problems that he was seeing his brick and mortar outlets facing: staffing, inventory, promotion, customer relationship, all of these issues that many brick and mortar retailers don't have a handle on. They're kind of intimidated by being on the internet, understanding how to coordinate all the various aspects of being a digital retailer in the brick and mortar business today. So it was a total transformation and total opportunity for him to find his purpose, and he's loving what he's doing. I really pushed him to start posting on LinkedIn and to post as an expert. Thought leadership is a big part of my prescription. he really took that to heart. He's all over LinkedIn with some really informative posts to help out his retailer base. It's a great story.
That is a great story. So, one of the things that it's interesting when you think about somebody that wants to make a change, and like you said, whether they're going to start their own bait shop or donut shop or whatever, it's like the one thing that I think we don't take action sometimes is because we're afraid to do it by ourselves. But I think about it like this: is if you and I were going to go climb Mount Everest tomorrow, well, I'm going to make sure that we've got the best boots, the best jackets, the best goggles, the best tent, the best everything. But one thing I'm going to make sure we got the best in the world is the best Sherpa. Right?
I was hoping you were going to say that.
Because to me, I have two coaches right now, and I tell people I'm a pain in the ass to coach, because if I start coaching you, I'm going to quit. Right? So you got to be able to coach me. You got to be able to you've got to have been up that mountain a lot, because I'm going to challenge, that's just my personality. Right. But I think that that's one place that people you can read all the books in the world. And one thing that I love, by the way, of these people that are at this stage is in their lives and what they're doing is, everybody will read 120-year-old Napoleon Hill book, right? And they go, wow, this is like innovative like it was 100 years ago. But when they see a human that has that same experience, they don't have that same reaction. But I think they should. If I was a 20-some-year-old startup, blah, 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 I'm going to make sure that I've got some people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s in there for that stability to create. When I create my vision, I need implementers and integrators that can do that. But so talk about maybe some of the things that you see in coaching, being that Sherpa, getting somebody up to the top of Mount Everest or wherever their goals and vision take them, that maybe people aren't thinking about the benefits of what you've seen, and talk about your approach to coaching.
Sure. So, wow, a lot to unpack on that. I'll go into the approach. That's kind of an easy way in, and we'll cover some of that of what you were talking about there in terms of the guidance and the importance of reaching out and making this a collaborative, cooperative, interactive effort. Success, that is. So the approach to coaching is very contrarian to what we're used to in thinking about getting a coach, getting a job. You think, okay, first thing to do, get the resume back in shape, right? Dust that off, put the last job at the top, move everything down, make sure it's 2 pages, figure out what are the open positions that are out there. Okay, send out the resume, pray for a callback, pray for an interview. Nothing happens. And that's because, as you well know, we are in a period where every position on average gets 250 applications. So there's one person who's going to win that lottery. And it's probably, there's good chance it's not going to be you. So how do you deal with what is essentially a broken hiring system? And it is breaking further because of AI. Mm-hmm. When you think about the amount of resumes that are being either rewritten or generated in whole cloth through AI, you also now have the opportunity to develop AI agents who are going to not only scour the web for job positions that you could do, relating it back to your resume, they're going to submit you for those jobs automatically. So the scale is insane. It's going to go from 250 applications per position to 2,500, 25,000 applications per position. It's an arms race. The employers are going to have to use AI to cull through those 25,000 applicants to figure out who's real, who's not, who actually wrote that, who didn't. And you're still not going to get the interview.
Yeah.
So the approach to do this is to use your network. But if you're going to use your network, how do you stand out, right? How do you differentiate yourself from all of the other people and develop relationships based on your value? And then how do you keep this thing going? You know, the worst question that comes out of a networking event is, what am I supposed to do now? Call these people whose business cards I got? Am I supposed to call them every 2 weeks and say, have you heard of anything? That's not going to fly.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be on the other end of that call. So the system that I've developed is based on 3 elements to address this crazy conundrum that we're in. The first element is define your superpower. Your superpower is that particular combination of skills, experiences, talents, preferences, values that represent you as a whole person professional. And your ability to understand that, define that, and articulate that value proposition is key, because that's how your network is going to understand whether or not they can support you, whether they understand you, and whether they can market for you. Because ultimately, you want your network to be your marketing engine. And it starts with what's the value that they're selling. So the second element, which is really about the networking, it's about really consolidating that network into a community of shared interests. Because a network, you know, the sum total of all the people you have on your LinkedIn profile, they're going to stand by and watch you fail. They really don't care about you.
Right.
But if you can identify and connect with a subset, 50, 100, maybe 150 people who really get you and who vibe with you and who believe in the business the way you believe in the business, they believe in the future the way you believe in the future, you share that and other commonalities, you want to connect and develop relationships with those people will step in and help you succeed. They will connect you to other opportunities, to other people who feel and believe the way you do about your business. And that momentum is what's going to get you the opportunities. It's going to connect you to the better oriented jobs. It's not about, can you fit your resume into any particular job description that could work. You want to find those few positions that you are really, really right for, that you're completely born to do. And you're going to have a much narrower field of view, but you're going to get a lot more hits for the submissions that you make because you're connected directly and personally through your network.
You know, you said something really important is unique genius, unique ability, whatever, like, you know, somebody wants to call it. Helping somebody find that is because if I said to a lot of people, tell me one thing you do better than anyone else, they're going to say, I don't do anything better than anybody else, right? They don't have sometimes that confidence. And, you know, confidence is a skill set, right? And you build confidence. And like knowing what your unique ability is, I think of somebody on my team, Nick Costco. He was a pilot for UPS, and so he was a co-pilot. So there's the captain, the co-pilot. They have different jobs, right? And so Nick, in the first few years that he was with our team, he said I would talk to him about unique genius or unique ability or whatever, and he'd say, "Oh, it's just." You know, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. And so if you don't know, I wasn't an expert at coaching him on what it was, to be honest. But he finally figured out that he was a connector, right? And by being a connector, he could make 7 figures in the right environment. But if he never figured out that he was a connector, that would have never happened. He'd still be flying airplanes, right? And that's a great job to have, flying airplanes, right? But when you're doing your unique genius, your unique ability, it you know, I don't want to say 10x's, but it something x's your income, because it's like the Sherpa, right? That top Sherpa, he gets paid more than everybody else.
Sure.
Unless he's dumb. But I mean, he gets paid more.
Yeah.
So, you know, do you find that, John, where people struggle to find that unique ability, that unique genius?
Of course, that is the first struggle. And that's why I spend the first portion of my coaching engagements with people figuring that out.
Yeah.
Because once they figure that out, everything else changes. Number one problem that people have with networking. I hate going to industry events. I hate going to networking events. I don't know what to say. I can't sell myself. I'm in sales. I can sell the product up and down 10 hours a day. I can't sell myself. Number one, that's a limiting belief.
Yeah.
Number two, if you understand what you love to do and what you do well and where you want to go with it, entirely an internal process, then you don't have to sell yourself a day in your life. All you're doing is sharing your enthusiasm for what you do.
Yeah.
So when someone says that question, that dreaded question of what do, you can't wait to answer that question and share what you're working on.
Yeah.
Because one other thing I want to slip in here is the idea that you never want to think of yourself as unemployed.
Right.
If you're between jobs, that just means you're not making a paycheck right now. But you're still that same professional who last week or last month was in that job.
Right.
Nothing's changed, right?
I think that, again, this coaching thing is so important. And I want to get to like how people get a hold of you and see if you're right for them or they're right for you and vice versa. But, it's funny because, I have a trainer. For a long time, I had two trainers and I know what to do in the gym, right? Even some days I think, why am I doing that? I can do so much more weight. And I'm thinking, but I trust her.
Yes.
I know she knows what she's doing.
Yes.
She's gotten me results.
Yes.
And guess what? I know I got to be there at 5:00 in the morning.
Right.
And if I don't, hey. So
accountability. Absolutely.
It's if somebody's sitting out there and saying, look, I know unique ability, unique genius. I know this. I know how to put together this plan. I know how to market myself or network. Two heads are better than one, and one that can be objective with you. We can tell ourselves a lot of stuff. I don't need a trainer. I mean, everybody wears size 38 pants. You could tell yourself, you can lie to yourself a lot. And I always use weight loss and stuff because the scale doesn't lie, right? Your checking account, your bank account doesn't lie.
It's about performance, right?
Yeah.
The sports analogy is the obvious analogy, and it's a good analogy because there is no professional or serious athlete who does not have a coach.
Absolutely.
It's about perspective. It's about accountability. And that perspective is really important. And that's why someone who says, "Oh, I'm a sales executive, but I can't sell myself." It's another example of that. The sense of I can sell someone else's product, or I can sell this other entity because it's not me. I have the perspective on that to understand what that product is, and I can represent that because I don't identify with it.
Yeah.
Right. When it's me, when it's my identity, I don't have that perspective. So you want to have another person there. Ideally, it is not your best friend. Your best friend is not your coach.
Yeah.
Right. Your colleague is not your coach. There are other factors involved there. If they are your friend, they don't want to kind of confront you. They don't really think about you this way. They're not taking a professional critical eye on you and your career. If it's a colleague, well, maybe there's some competition there. Maybe there's some fear there. There's some interesting studies about the ineffectiveness of strong ties in relationships, and particularly in terms of career relationships, that people that you know well, you've known for a long time, may not be the best people to help you find the next job. And the people with the weak ties, the people who you know more casually, don't seem to have this same block and seem to be able to connect you better. And I think a lot of that has to do with this kind of sense of closeness that we have and the kind of fears that we overlay onto relationships about our friend who is in need. Our friend needs a job. They got fired ignominiously at this other company. Oh my God, I'm kind of paralyzed. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help them. I'm afraid to help them. I'm afraid that if I help help them. If I refer them in the wrong way, it's going to blow back on me.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of considerations there. So we have a lot of bad thinking going on around some of these processes around jobs. That's why it's important to go for a third-party professional who is in this field every day, who can kind of talk you off the ceiling, get you on a plan, get you showing up for yourself. And my goal is to get people in and out the door and get them to learn how to fish so that they can use this system that I've developed for the rest of their career. And I firmly believe, this is a radical statement, that if you follow this particular prescription, and I'm not saying this is the only prescription out there, but it's mine, it seems to work for people, you will never have to search for a job again.
Love that. Yeah.
Because you're relying on your superpower, your sense of what you do, the value you provide. You're communicating that effectively to a group of people who understand you and have connections and can lead you to more connections. And then the third element, which we didn't talk about, is this idea of thought leadership, of establishing yourself as an expert in your field, taking every opportunity you can to speak about that, to teach it, to connect with people on this set of topics that you like to share, which you believe are essential to the future of your business. And that flywheel helps you gain and build momentum that is going to constantly be bringing opportunities to you when you're in a job, when you're between jobs. It doesn't really matter. The job is just kind of the blah, blah, blah of the everyday. It's really about your professional identity and reputation and your position in your larger community. That's what's going to keep you steadily employed.
I love that. I always think about golfers. If you take Tiger Woods back in his prime, right? I mean, he had a coach all the way, right?
Yeah.
Sitting there watching him hit golf balls.
Yeah.
And nobody could hit a golf ball like Tiger Woods back in the day, right? But and his coach couldn't. But
right.
Guess what? His coach could say, hey, this isn't working. This isn't working. You need to change this.
Yeah.
And I think of Larry Bird. There was a quote one time, and he was asking about his coaches, and he said, coaches coach, I play. Right? Like, understand your role in that relationship. So, John, how do people find you, learn more about you, and evaluate whether this is right for them?
Sure. So I'm the only John Tarnoff on LinkedIn. So I would start there. I've got a newsletter. You can read all sorts of stuff going back a few years about job search tips, networking tips, thought leadership tips. You can also find them on my blog at johntarnoff.com. And I've also started a community called the Mid-Career Lab, which you can find at midcareerlab.com, which is a small community of people who are in this stage, who are looking to communicate and bond with other people in this stage. And we do kind of building this up slowly. We do a series of events, do a monthly call to get together, talk about kind of a little bit of a mastermind about who's out on the search, what secrets have you discovered, what tips do you have for other people. I bring in speakers. So there's a little bit of a momentum going around this. And I just encourage people to find me and connect with me. And you can just reach me through LinkedIn.
Perfect. All right, John, I got two questions for you. The first one, through all this experience of coaching, everything else, somebody had to give you some great advice. What was the best advice anybody's ever given you?
I think that would have to be find a mentor and be a mentor.
Love it.
So the idea of, back to what we've been talking about for the entire time here, is you can't do this by yourself. And you want to latch on to someone who's got some wisdom, who can help you clear those weeds ahead of you, and then pay it forward. Turn back, help the people who are coming up behind you do the same thing.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's kind of like that accountability too that you talked about. I think it's so important, because when you say to somebody, hey, if it's a trainer or something like that, I always like to use fitness, is take a picture. Take a picture, front, back, sideways, in a pair of shorts, no shirt, right? Okay.
Yep.
You can't say, hey, I've been doing great. I'm really doing great. If you're making progress, then you're doing great. If you're not making progress, then you're not doing great.
Right.
So, I love that.
Let me throw another one in there based on what you're just saying about taking a picture. And that is the old Peter Drucker line, what gets measured gets managed.
I love that. Yeah.
Right? And if you're not measuring your progress, if you're not tracking what you're doing, and you haven't set up some kind of a metric, some kind of a OKR KPI system for your career growth, then you're missing out. You're leaving money on the table. You need to be tracking.
It's funny. Every month when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would write down all the money that I had in every account that I had, right? Whether it was cash, and assets. And I would just do this just off the top of my head on a piece of paper. And if it was growing, then I was doing well. If it wasn't growing, then we got a problem. We got to change course, right? So, all right, last question, John. Yeah. If God came down from heaven and only allowed you to retain the knowledge that you've received from one book, what would that book be?
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this question. I've been kind of thinking about it while we've been talking. And I would have to say the book, and I this answer is because this is a book I keep coming back to, and I see it on my shelf, and every once in a while I'll just go and I'll pick it up. And that is the Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah.
Each one of those resonates deeply. It is a flywheel in that the 7th habit is sharpening the saw. It's going back over the first 6 habits.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking when you said the 7 habits. That's the one that I think about all the time, is sharpening the saw.
Yeah. It is, because it really is it's a self-contained system that's all about growth on so many levels. And people often misquote the title as being the 7 habits of highly successful people. It's not successful people, it's effective people. And I think that's another key for me. And something I've always kind of tried to strive for is this idea of, well, how can I be effective? How can I actually get stuff done and do more? And I've been fortunate enough to have worked with some highly effective people in my time and seen them as mentors and people who I try to emulate in many ways. But the blueprint for it, for me, is all in Covey.
So, what I love about that is you talk about sharpening the saw. So I always say, okay, like, where else is that lesson taught, right? In a different way. And you go back to the Bible, right? And whether you believe the Bible is the word of God or you believe it's just some great book with a bunch of good wisdom in it, is iron sharpens iron. So it goes back to the coaching thing, right? Yes. It's like, look, this stuff has been around for thousands of years.
That's right.
Iron sharpens iron. Stephen Covey, sharpen the saw. Go back.
Yeah.
There's not a football team in the world that doesn't go back to the basics. There's not a golfer in the world that doesn't chip and putt before they hit balls.
Yeah.
Right? But you need that coach, because when you're going, hey, what's going wrong?
Yeah.
The coach can usually say, hey, we're just getting off track on this. And then you go back to it and you're like, have you ever had a golf? I don't know if you play golf or not, John, but sometimes you can go out there and you can't hit the ball to save your life. And then it's 5 minutes with a golf pro on the range. And it's like, oh, that was dumb. Why was I doing that? And so I love that sharpen. I mean, and by the way, I think that book, How to Win Friends, Influence People, Magic. I mean, all these books, they get a lot of press. But for some reason, Stephen, that book doesn't get as much press as like a classic as it used to. Because in the 80s, everybody knew that book.
That's right.
Right. I mean, that was like you want to be successful, do these 7 habits, or most of them, if you can't do all 7. And so I think that's a great reminder. It's been a while since I don't remember anybody mentioning that book as the one book, but those 7 things, if you have not read this book, go get it today, download it, do whatever you got to do, get it by Amazon tomorrow, but read that book.
It is the OG personal growth and business growth book.
And some of these things, like, I don't want to say some of these things are, some of the books that are out there are great, but they teach you like 1 or 2 things. This book teaches you a lot. I mean, you could go back and reread this book every year and you would get something new out of it. So, I'm enthusiastic about that book too. So I'm glad that you brought it up. John, thank you so much for being on the show. And audience, reach out to John Tarnoff at johntarnoff.com. We'll put all of this in the show notes, and definitely read this 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Stephen Covey. And thank you. We're going to wrap this up, audience, like we do every episode, with the incredible words of Earl Nightingale and The Strangest Secret. Take it away, Earl.
Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about.
Thanks for listening to the Breakaway Wealth Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever you're listening so you never miss an episode. If you want to start increasing your wealth building ability right now, go to community.createtailwind.com to join our free online community and get access to free, in-depth training designed to help you build real, lasting wealth. See you next week.